Introduce yourself.
Let's flip the cam.
I'm John Rible, and what I wanted to talk about was, thank you, was my first 10 years or so of Ford. Started about 50 years ago. I was on the East Coast in Boston. Back there, I'd gone to school back there, come back to California to work and get drafted, and then ended up back in Massachusetts. I was the director of a data processing center at a community college, starting in 1971. They had tab equipment. And my job was initial job was to plan the installation of a computer with the community college. 5 years later, it had not happened. We were still using tab equipment. We had 3,500 part-time evening students and 1,500 day students. And I had a random access database on huge piles of punch cards. We computed a GPA every semester by going to a different university or business and did stuff. I was getting tired of it, especially the politics. I got myself involved with a statewide effort to bring computers to all of the community colleges, 12 of them. So much politics. That was my first real job. And it was the last time that I spent that many years as an employee. I had an ulcer, had other issues going on, and I felt very isolated. So I quit and stayed on for a little bit because we did get a contract finally statewide. And in 76, 77, we actually started getting a computer in there, but I was done with it. I noticed microprocessors, personal computers were out. I went to a MITS Altair traveling show and got excited on the East Coast. But all the stuff was going on out here in California, and it just was hard to do it through magazine subscriptions and newsletters and all of that. And then finally in, 77, I think it was, no, 76, I found the New England Computer Society and started going to local meetings with computer people interested in computers doing things. I was just about to get a computer and was trying to figure out which one. And I took a trip to California, a bus trip across and back where you could get on and off the bus whenever you wanted to for a single fare, and stopped and saw people. And I stopped in at Sphere Microcomputers in just north of Salt Lake City in Utah and was impressed. It was an all-in-one. After MITS, there was no way I wanted to build something and toggle switches. They had something that looked like a real console. It was like what came out later, TRS-80 Model 3. You had a keyboard and a screen and all these boards inside. It ended up being a bit of a hassle because the boards were connected by 3 14-pin ribbon cables. They kept losing it. Had 4K of RAM, quickly up to 16K of RAM, and a total of 512 bytes of PROM. 256 for the Motorola MicBug. This was a 6800 base machine, Motorola MicBug, and 256 to drive the screen. to do like a tiny editor sort of thing. I got a Southwest Tech 40-column printer, and we used cassette tape, Kansas City Standard. I had to record things multiple times to make sure that I could read it back in. With the People's Computer Company newsletter, which ended up being Dr. Dobbs eventually, I got through them, I found out about and got Tom Pittman's Tiny Basic. I wasn't happy settling with BASIC, and I looked at it, and it was a byte-coded token interpreted BASIC. And I created and got published extendable Tiny Basic, which allowed you to create new opcodes that were treated just the same as the existing opcodes. I hadn't yet heard about Forth. Forth, when I did hear about it, just was such a natural environment. I wanted it. And somehow I got connected with Programma, a company that was hiring programmers looking particularly for Forth programmers. I got a job with them to try, and that's my first experience in Forth, moving a 6502 Forth to a 6800. The 6502 Forth was somebody's master thesis. This was in probably 77. And it was a listing of the assembly and then the Forth words that were at the end of it, badly photocopied, annotated, some of it was illegible, and I was converting it and doing it on a machine that was brand new. And I came up with, I called it, it was Forth language, but Forth Inc. was very proprietary about the use of Forth. And so I called my version SLURP, the Structured Language Using Reverse Polish. Tongue-in-cheek acronym. That was fun. I got going with it. I didn't work on it fast enough to satisfy Programma, but I ended up getting another job that was doing a data logger and in assembly language on a 6809, and could get in there and program it. And they had, would have been ideal for Forth because they were just these individual applications, and it was just the control logic. It was all done in assembly language. I had done so much assembly language, I was done with it, and I quit that job, partly because of not willing to go to Forth, and partly because the marketing people got ahead of themselves, and they advertised at a national conference with brochures for software that hadn't even been agreed upon or started yet. And they took orders and they got money. And this just, this is the kind of pressure a programmer does not do. It is not guaranteed to give a good product. That was in 78. Shortly after that, I found that in addition to the New England Computer Society, there was a Miller Microcomputer Services user group. Dick and Jill Miller, I met, and well, I met them very weirdly. A friend that I had met at the Miss Altair traveling show years later, we connected. He had a TRS-80 Model 1. And he called me up one day and said, "You got to come over, got to see this." It had floppy disks, not cassette. And he had a purloined copy of Miller's Forth. And I just got into it. It was wonderful. So as soon as I could afford it, I went out and got a TRS-80 Model 1 and bought Dick and Jill's Forth and started disassembling and looking at how it worked. And I kept sending notes to Dick and Jill saying, hey, what about changing this? What about doing that? It wasn't long before I was actually working for him. I would not work as an employee, but as a contractor, and met in my mind, one of the greatest unrecognized fourth programmers, Tom Dowling. He created from, I don't know what information, a fourth system that ran on the Z80. He was working at Raytheon Products up in north of Boston. He was their secret weapon. They would get a contract, they would be up against a deadline, and Tom would come in and overnight or a day or two, he would have the whole thing programmed in fourth that they didn't know, the rest of the company didn't know anything about it. They just know, oh, we have something that works. And somewhere Tom and Dick and Jill got together, and I loved working with Millers because I could just do the programming. They did all of the customer interactions, the figuring stuff out, the publicity. That was part of the previous jobs that I did not like. And so I got to work with Dick and Jill, and they came out to the, let's see, I came out to the 1980, I think it was, formal. And Dick and Tom presented papers, and I don't like this kind of stuff. I don't like doing papers. I don't like writing so much. But I came up with a poster session, just big thing, and it was advocating the use of -1 as the canonical truth. This was in 1980, right? It was after the 79 standard, which had +1. I was embarrassed and amazed when Chuck came by and looked at it. This is interesting. Dean's been bugging me about this for a number of years. And then when the next, was it 83 standard came out, -1 was true, creating all kinds of hassles for people's programs. But that started my connection to Chuck, such that after I got married in '84, still working with Millers, working on a project at that time, built on Miller's thing, a program called Tracker. Millers put out Forthright, which was an expandable word processor, and put out Data Handler, which was a spreadsheet. Tracker, rich person came in and said, let's put those together and create something that would compete with Borland and various other folks. And he put it together. We worked on it for a number of years. Borland eventually bought it, but they squashed it because it was more powerful than their high-priced program offering, and it was smaller and faster than their low-priced one. They couldn't figure out where they could market this. Interesting thing that it had a user manual that Leo Brody wrote that was on the same style as the starting forth and thinking forth. Somehow all of this stuff came together. But after I got married, we didn't want to stay in the Boston area, and we started looking from Eureka down to Santa Barbara, various places. My wife was an artist and writer, and so she was looking for that kind of community. And Chuck has just moved up to Northern California, and so I was looking to be close to Chuck. We chose Santa Cruz, and that started fascinating time because we had just sold a group house in Boston. I had a bunch of money and talking it out with my wife, we agreed. I came out to California with the expectation of being an apprentice for Chuck, not needing an income for a year, that I could come out and learn the basics of what he was working on at the time, which was OPEC. A couple of my friends and I had sent Chuck $5,000 in the 80, somewhere in the early to support the development of his Echo board computer. So I came out and I ended up got here just after the 4th of July. And one of the first things I did, I went up to see Chuck, and then we'd been going to all of the conferences, Rochester and the Selamore conferences for all these years, and had really gotten to be comfortable in both with Chuck and his wife and son. And then got out about NOVIX and went up and met John Golden and Bob Murphy, who were employees there. And within a month, they had me hired as a contractor at NOVIX. Just boom, like that. And it was a fascinating, let's see, that started in 85, so it was about 2 or 3 years worth of work. NOVIX was an amazing kludge that got put together out of Fourth Inc. and John Peters, who it was clear to a couple of us that were there inside NOVIX that Peters was looking for sizzle. He wanted to sell. He wanted to get people to give him money. And this chip was a great way of doing it. The company where we were located was funded. A lot of the money came from a company that their main business was selling large computer systems to Saudi Arabian sheiks. And part of that was bringing the sheiks' sons or nephews to the United States to learn how to operate those machines. Well, what they learned was how to drink and party and just have a good time. We learned that one of the 360s, still in its packaging, sat in the desert for 3 years, unopened. Well, the children got this thing. I was submitting monthly invoices, and by December, 6 months later, 5 months later, I hadn't received any money. My brother happens to be a lawyer, real estate lawyer in Silicon Valley. I asked him for a letter and promised the funding people that there would be a lawsuit if they didn't work out some agreement. We came to an agreement. It was really strange. But it meant that I signed on as an employee because it put me higher in the food chain. There were all kinds of anomalies going on at NOVIX. The craziest thing was that Chuck stayed up on the hill after the 4000 was actually done and out. Bob Murphy was a hardware person, employee at NOVIX, because he was fired from his previous role. He was working for the company that NOVIX had contracted with to develop a gate array version of the NOVIX. And it was on a gate array, but it was proposed that have 3 chips and do all this stuff. Chuck and Bob sat down one night. I think the rumor was it was well fueled, and in one night came up with the layout to do it on a single chip. And Bob's management said that doesn't work for us, and so he left. He was hired on April 1st, 1984. I became an employee on April 1st of 86. I'm sorry, not 84. Bob was in April of 85, and I was April of 86. Fitting for April Fool. But various things were going on. Other people were incorporating the chip. The first job that I had, I'm sorry, Greg Bailey is somebody that I trust my life with and respect and have worked with for years and years and years. But our first interaction was not pleasant, because in January of 85, he had rewritten the Polyforth manual to be a NOVIX supplement, to be the NOVIX manual. And it was blazingly accurate, in your face accurate about all of the issues and how the thing worked. This was supposed to be, the 4000 when it came out was supposed to be a test chip, and it was going to be upgraded. What happened, people got very upset that it was going to be just upgraded. There was a lot of conflict, but this manual, management decided that it couldn't be published, that it was too abrasive. It would not get people to use the computer. I was charged with rewriting it. I don't like to write. My wife and I at the time were living with another couple who was a tech writer. And I talked him into it, and he ended up writing it. We took almost everything but put it into a slightly more pleasant, soft-spoken wording to get it out and be used. Dr. Ting was around a lot. His footsteps in an empty valley were really, really nice to see. He came to NOVIX a lot and hung out, wandered around and talked with people. He put on a conference in Taiwan, a fourth conference in China. Bob and I visited another name, I don't have it in my head right at the moment, with Ting there, and we were talking about this other board. And on his desk was a book, and it was the proceedings of that conference in Taiwan. And as I went and lifted it, picked it up, I noticed that Ting and the gentleman there made looks at each other, and I thumbed through it. In that proceedings were a number of handwritten pages of internal NOVIX documentation that somewhere along the line, Dr. Ting had made copies of. They were photographed it or Xerox, we don't know. I asked if I could, hey, this is great, can I have a copy? Oh, no, you can't have a copy. That just set me really, there was something wrong about that, because there was no credit given to NOVIX for that, for having those internal documents. Still don't know, didn't know where they came from. We went on, licensed the chip to a private person who wanted to take it and go in a particular direction, and he was willing to pay some big bucks up front that John Pierce got a bunch of money that meant he could make the payroll the next week, next month. And then Harris came around and started asking. And they sent a team out. At that point, John Golden, Bob Murphy, and I left NOVIX, formed our own company, QSD. And we were charged with transferring the technology from NOVIX to Harris. Their team came out and they knew how much money they were going to be willing to spend. We advised them, only pay half of it now. Because if you don't pay the rest at the end, there won't be any money to pay us for our work in doing this transfer. We would have spent it by that time. Anyway, that sort of ended my 10 years. That was in 77, 78. I'm sorry, 77, 78 when it started, and up through 87, 88. And all of that was going on. To get details, I'm going to have to write a book about this in order to get the details of it. But that is just a start.
Can we impose upon you for more details, perhaps next month? Or
I can continue the journey.
That'd be great.
Future, I'm not sure. December is not a good month.
Yeah.
This I have my other job. I spend time with children, and this Christmas would be my 16th year as Santa Cruz's downtown Santa.
Yeah. With that, we're going to take a brief time to go eat lunch. Your Zoom room will remain open. And those of you out there who aren't going to lunch or who are eating at your computers are welcome to talk among themselves. When we turn the recorder off, I think it's probably best. Who knows what utterances will be made that should not be recorded.